Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My girlfriend informed me she was staying late at the office. Shortly after, her colleague unintentionally shared a team picture showing her perched on his knee. I discreetly downloaded it. Later that evening, I submitted it to the personnel department. The outcome was epic. The message from my partner, Sarah, arrived at 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Hi love, I'll be really delayed this evening. The whole team is pulling together to meet the quarterly target. Don't stay awake for me." I was lounging on the sofa, flipping through a novel. I replied with a brief, "Okay, give it your best." About 90 minutes later, I was browsing Instagram to pass the time before sleep. That's when I spotted it. It wasn't on her profile, naturally. It appeared on the page of a young marketing assistant from her team, a guy called Ryan, famous for posting too much. He had uploaded a typical group snapshot, a fuzzy image of around 10 folks crammed into a booth at a stylish city bar. The description said, "Goal achieved, group festivities." And smack in the center of the joyful gathering was Sarah. She was giggling, gripping a drink, and positioned directly on the lap of her supervisor, a high-level executive named Brian. His arm was firmly around her midsection, and his palm was placed a bit too elevated on her torso. They appeared relaxed, intimate, as if this wasn't their initial time in such a setup. I gazed at the image for a solid minute. My pulse didn't quicken. My gut didn't sink. I experienced an odd, nearly peaceful feeling of tranquility. The type of tranquility you sense when a prolonged, tiresome inquiry at last produces one flawless bit of undeniable proof. The faint doubt I'd been nurturing for months had just been verified with a timestamp and location tag. I didn't become furious. I didn't hurl my device. I simply pressed my finger on the display and silently stored the picture in my gallery. Then I uploaded it to my protected online storage. After that, I copied it to a secured external drive. In my line of work, you always safeguard your documentation. Sarah believed she was at a staff party. She had no clue she was the focus of a freshly initiated internal probe. And I was set to become the most committed, most unrelenting chief examiner she'd ever faced. Let's make one thing perfectly clear. I am not a pushover. I am not a rug. I am the lead manager of business ethics for a top Fortune 500 firm. It's a role that seems dull, and largely it is. But my whole profession rests on one steadfast rule. Regulations are there for a purpose. I am the individual who drafts the ethics guidelines. I am the one who probes breaches of them, and I am the one who suggests dismissal for those who believe the guidelines don't pertain to them. My existence is a stronghold, constructed from protocols, processes, and the total assurance that behaviors lead to repercussions. I encountered Sarah 2 years back at a firm social event. We are employed by the same huge technology corporation, but in entirely separate areas. She's in promotions, the section of glossy slideshows and dubious reimbursement claims. I'm in ethics, the section they murmur about quietly. She was disorder. I was structure. I viewed her as intriguing. I regarded her as a private test, a framework functioning well beyond normal limits. I truly believed I could exert a beneficial effect, that I could steer her toward a more steady, more ethical lifestyle. Our connection wasn't a transaction. It was, in my view, a reform initiative. I was oblivious to the reality that she had no desire to be reformed. She simply wanted a backer. I wasn't a fool. For 2 years, I established firm limits. I never combined our money matters. The residence we shared was solely mine, bought well prior to meeting her. I didn't cover her expenses. She earned her own income, and she handled her own affairs. My input was offering a reliable dwelling and a companionship with a guy I thought was aiding her development. I was mistaken. I wasn't assisting her progress. I was merely supplying a safe foundation from which she could conduct her own misleading activities. The image wasn't merely a private disloyalty. It was a work-related one. By perching on her superior's knee, she wasn't only my partner being disloyal. She was a staff member in a lower role, participating in a public show of unsuitable behavior with her immediate boss. It was an obvious, blatant infringement of at least 4 parts of the firm's ethics guidelines. Guidelines that I had personally authored. She assumed she was betraying her partner. She had no notion she was betraying the individual who controlled her whole career path in his grasp. That evening, after securing the proof, I entered my study at home. I created a fresh, protected document on my system. I named it Incident Report S. Thompson B. Hayes. Then I set up a new, untraceable email account. From that account, I prepared an official integrity report. It was a masterpiece, composed, expert, and crushingly accurate. It referenced the precise rules being broken: socializing, bias conflict, improper actions, and abuse of firm assets. Since I was reasonably sure the staff gathering would appear on Brian's reimbursement form, I included the image as proof item A, and then I dispatched it straight to the single individual at the organization whose duty it was to handle this with utmost gravity: the Director of Human Resources. The inquiry had formally started, and the main targets were oblivious to being under scrutiny. Update 1. The day following my submission of the report was a lesson in tactical misdirection. Sarah returned home near 2 a.m., reeking of booze and inexpensive scent. She crept into the sleeping area, assuming I was out cold. I was alert, naturally, gazing at the roof, my thoughts systematically planning the upcoming 20 steps. In the a.m., she was somewhat under the weather, but otherwise her typical lively persona. "Goodness, yesterday was wild," she remarked, serving herself some Java. "We stayed at the workplace till midnight. Brian is such a taskmaster." I merely agreed, my expression a facade of gentle, spousal empathy. "Sounds challenging," I responded. "Ensure he reimburses you for a nice meal after all that extra time." This was the heart of my approach. Complete, unshakable routine. A probe is most successful when the individuals are unaware of observation. I required her to proceed as normal. I needed her to persist in errors. The personnel unit at my firm is a smooth-running, fearsome operation. They don't fool around. I understood my untraceable report, with its evident visual proof, would initiate a prompt, urgent inquiry. I also knew it would be managed with extreme caution initially. My position in ethics provides me a special degree of entry and understanding into the firm's internal operations. I don't collaborate directly with personnel on these sorts of matters to prevent any bias, but I know the strategy. I knew they would begin by discreetly retrieving documents: email exchanges, chat records, reimbursement forms, business trip logs, even the entries from the access card readers at the building entrances. They would assemble a dossier before conversing with anyone, and I knew they would uncover additional details, because I had invested the past half year subtly noting a sequence of conduct that was minimally, profoundly unprofessional. I hadn't responded earlier since it was private. Now it was beyond private. It was an ethics concern. I had noticed the evening ride-sharing bills on our joint account, journeys from the workplace to her place before she relocated with me, all billed to Brian's business card. I had seen the eatery charges from group meals that involved only two, at spots much too intimate for a leader and his team member. I had even, during the one time I used her computer to output a document, viewed a series of chat messages from Brian that were so outrageously improper they would embarrass a mariner. I hadn't preserved them at that moment. It was an oversight I was preparing to correct. My task now was to act as an additional, nameless informant. I needed to supply the personnel probe with the documentation they sought, without disclosing who I was. That Saturday, while Sarah was away at lunch with her similarly terrible companions, I executed the next stage of my scheme. I entered our study and started her private computer, which she never secured with a code. It required under 10 minutes to locate what I needed. The conversation records with Brian remained, a goldmine of condemning proof. There were playful remarks, private quips, and most incriminating, a set of dialogues where he assured her an advancement she lacked qualifications for, in return for her devotion. I captured clear images of the display with my mobile. I avoided saving the documents outright, since that might create a traceable path. The images were sharp, irrefutable evidence of a trade-off deal and an unsuitable connection. This extended beyond a tipsy evening at a pub. This concerned a grave misuse of authority by a top executive. I also examined the joint image collection on our online storage. Hidden in a directory she assumed I ignored were additional shots from firm gatherings. Shots where she and Brian were consistently a tad too near, a tad too cozy. I preserved them all. I gathered this fresh proof into another collection. I transmitted it from a separate untraceable email, this time to the primary personnel examiner I knew was handling the matter. The message was straightforward. I am a coworker of Sarah Thompson. I know an inquiry is in progress. This might assist. I prefer to stay nameless due to concern over reprisal. The snare was now loaded with a bounty of proof. Sarah and Brian thought they faced a lone, unclear snapshot. They were unaware I was preparing to unload a whole archive on them. The initial indication that the probe had intensified arrived the next Tuesday. Sarah returned from the job appearing drained and upset. The oddest event occurred today, she mentioned, serving herself a generous pour of vino. Personnel summoned me for a discussion and Brian as well, apart. They posed all these odd inquiries. Regarding our job dynamic, about evening activities, about reimbursement forms. It was very rigorous. I displayed my finest worried partner expression. That sounds strange, I commented. What's the reason? No clue. She deceived, her gaze shifting aside. Brian suspects someone holds a vendetta toward him and aims to cause issues. We both informed them we maintain an excellent work dynamic. It was nothing major. I simply agreed. I'm certain it is, I stated. Deceiving personnel in an official probe, a dismissible violation by itself. The elements were aligning more ideally than I could have envisioned. She was clueless, she was admitting her own professional downfall to me. She viewed me as her secure refuge. I was the one who launched the missile. The week after the first personnel sessions was a stunning, gradual disaster. Sarah and Brian had committed the most deadly mistake possible in a business probe. They had falsified, and they falsified identically, so their accounts were now fixed. They stood on a hidden door, linked, totally ignorant that I held the lever. Now personnel possessed their formal recorded declarations. Declarations asserting a strictly work-related bond. Declarations I knew were set to be methodically torn apart by the proof I supplied. The following step in the procedure would be a detailed review of their business accounts. And this is where my own skills became useful. I knew precisely what the investigator would seek, and I chose to aid in locating it. On Wednesday, I dispatched a third and last nameless message. This one was more specialized. It directed toward particular times and specific reimbursement forms submitted by Brian. It emphasized a supper on a date when I recalled Sarah and I attended a relative's occasion, indicating the group supper Brian claimed was with another. It noted a lodging charge from a work journey to a town where the firm had no customers. A journey I knew Sarah had also taken for a pal's pre-wedding event. This was the decisive blow. It provided the probe an exact guide to their deceit. It transcended mere playful notes or one improper image. It was now an evident trend of them utilizing firm funds to support their liaison. Sarah's stress throughout the week was delightful to observe. She was nervous, grumpy, and always messaging Brian on her device. She tried to align her account, tried to seal the breaches in a vessel already midway to the depths. She even dared to grumble to me about the pressure. This entire personnel situation is horrific, she said one night. It's so diverting. I can't concentrate on my tasks, and Brian is acting really odd about it. You simply need to be truthful, I replied, staring directly at her. Provided you're sincere, there's no concern. That's what I always emphasize in my ethics sessions. The expression of alarm that passed over her features was invaluable. The blow landed at last on Friday. It was a lovely, bright afternoon. I was in my workspace examining a fresh version of our anti-bribery guidelines when I received a firm-wide notification. It was a bland, business memo from the head of the promotions unit. We are notifying you that Brian Hayes has departed the organization, effective now. We hope for his success in upcoming pursuits. He had been dismissed without fanfare. The wording, hope for his success in upcoming pursuits, is business jargon for, he was dismissed with justification and we can't disclose the juicy specifics legally. I knew Sarah's outcome would be determined independently. I headed home, prepared a beverage, and awaited. She entered 2 hours afterward. Her complexion was pale, her eyes swollen. She carried a modest cardboard container with her desk items. She remained silent. She merely proceeded to the sofa and sat, gazing blankly. Tough day? I inquired, my tone laced with pretended compassion. She finally glanced at me. They dismissed Brian, she murmured. They summoned me right afterward. They displayed everything, the snapshot, the messages, the reimbursement forms, the lodging charge. She began weeping, soft, broken sobs. They know we deceived. They placed me on unpaid leave, awaiting final dismissal. I allowed the quiet to linger for an extended period. I permitted her to remain there, simmering in the ruins of her existence. Then I approached the low table and set a lone printed snapshot on it, visible side up. It was the image of her on Brian's knee. Her gaze shot up. She examined the snapshot, then me. And in her expression I witnessed the ultimate, terrifying elements of the mystery align. It was you, she uttered, her tone hardly audible. The nameless report. It was you. I remained silent. I just savored a deliberate drink from my glass. Final update. The face-off in the sitting area wasn't the heated yelling bout she likely anticipated. My retribution was never about volume. It was about accuracy. Why? She questioned, the sobs now streaming openly. Why would you inflict this on me? I at last settled in the seat across from her. Allow me to clarify this in a way you could grasp. I started, my tone as composed and firm as if leading a corrective session. You and I are part of an organization with ethics guidelines, a collection of standards we all commit to follow. It's the basis of our work environment. It's what guarantees a secure, equitable, and moral setting. I moved closer. You didn't merely betray me, Sarah. You breached company guidelines. You took part in an unsuitable bond with your immediate leader. You joined in a plot to swindle the firm by fabricating reimbursement forms. And then, when interrogated by human resources in an official probe, you falsified. You committed falsehood under oath. She simply gaped at me, stunned. She had never pondered that her private disloyalty carried a work aspect. I am the lead manager of business ethics, I proceeded. My complete role, my entire work persona is founded on applying those standards. The standards you so carelessly and repeatedly ignored. You gripe about my role being tedious, about me being too inflexible. But that inflexibility, that total commitment to the standards is what prevents our firm from collapsing. It's what I hold dear. So when I viewed that snapshot, I said, pointing at the image on the table, I didn't just see my partner on another guy's knee. I saw an evident and immediate danger to the soundness of the framework I am pledged to defend. I saw an ethics lapse, and I performed my duty. I reported it exactly as any staff member is required to. You ruined my existence over a handbook, she wept. No, I responded, rising. You ruined your existence because you lack principles. You assumed you could exist in a realm without standards, without outcomes. You thought you could enjoy my reliability at home while you ignored the standards at work. You didn't comprehend that for someone like me, they are identical. My private existence and my work existence are ruled by the same ethics guidelines. You infringed both. The outcomes are merely the framework adjusting itself. I proceeded to the entrance and unlocked it. Your position at the firm is finished. Our commitment is finished. Your stay in my residence is finished. I have prepared a bag for you with several days' attire. It's near the entrance. I will arrange for the remainder of your items to be expertly boxed and delivered to your folks' place by week's end. Where should I head? She sobbed. That is a practical issue that is beyond my area's responsibility. I stated, farewell, Sarah. I departed from her there on the sofa and took an extended stroll. Upon returning 2 hours later, she and her bag had vanished. It's been 4 weeks now. The firm completed her dismissal. Brian, I learned, is unhireable in our field. The tale of his dismissal for an affair with a team member and fabricating reimbursement forms has circulated rapidly. Sarah, as assured, had to relocate with her parents. Her path in technology is done. She has no funds, no employment, and a standing that is utterly destroyed. My retribution wasn't an act of emotion. It was an ethics assessment. I examined her obvious contempt for the standards of our bond, and I compared it to the stark, rigid, merciless standards of the realm she believed she could dominate. She was reviewed, and she flopped. Dramatically, she assumed she was merely engaging in a pastime. She never grasped that I was the one who crafted the handbook. And the establishment always triumphs.